Because all of business has a part of business is a tech business. And so it's just and it's the one those are tech music and like everybody converges. So you getting out of the way.
I was going to let her start. That would have been awesome. Hey, you guys, how you doing?
Great.
I want to welcome you guys for coming here. I especially want to welcome you guys for coming here because it took you a long time to get here. So we're going to make it worth your while, okay? Is that a deal? You could have been doing a lot of other things than fighting traffic, I know. But what that time that you spent together, invaluable, right?
You don't know that.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And all of us too. So, you know what, you guys? What I want to do tonight is we're gonna hopefully kind of get you thinking about some things that you know, but maybe you haven't thought of for a while. And then we're going to kind of give you a little bit of a solution to some challenges that we might all have. And we're going to kind of see where that goes. Is that all right? All right. So again, I want to kind of get everybody thinking. My name is Sue Twiddell. I am a regional vice president with Primerica. This was not my first career, and I may as well tell you just right up front, I was a dental hygienist. It is what my degree happens to be in. And it's interesting because I never thought I would be here. I not in a million years. And as we go through, I think you'll see why I am. Because there's a lot of things that go on. They go on in our minds, and we start thinking about it, but we don't really apply a lot of it. So let me kind of backtrack here and kind of go to where we know some things. First of all, my name. Here's something that I think we all know. We all know that there's a whole group of people called the wealthy. Yeah? Yeah. And they have pretty much everything institutionalized. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, they have education. Their kids are going to college. It's not matter if they're going to college. It's, are you going to my mom and dad, right? Okay. They have opportunity, business ownership. How many wealthy people really work for somebody else? Probably work for themselves, right? Financial freedom. They're going to come and go as they want. Oh, you guys, I was just thinking about this. I was on the internet today. And you never know what you're going to find on the internet, right? They came out with a brand new Corvette. Have you guys seen that thing? That thing's hot. That's really cool. And it's not overly priced if I had enough money to go and drop it. I mean, it's only around 80 grand or so. So, and anymore, I mean, when you guys were talking about minivans the other day, some of them are like 60,000. It's amazing what's happening. But to be able to just go out, buy it whenever you want, change it off the next year or the year after that, be able to come and go. If we want to go up to dinner up in San Francisco, we fly on up, we fly on back. That'd be kind of cool, right? And we know that there's a group of people that do that all the time. Okay? They've also got financial guidance. The financial advisors love this group of people. Why? That's where all the money is, right? If we're in financial services and our goal is to just make money, wouldn't we sit down with the people that have the most money?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of these things are pretty much institutionalized in this group of people. And then another thing that I think most of us really realize is there's another group of people down here called the financially dependent or the not so wealthy, and the government takes care of them. They've got free preschools. I don't know if all you guys knew that or not, but preschool's pretty much free for this group of people. They also have free child care, which is kind of interesting. One of those things that I didn't realize, but if the parents are working and there's little kids, yeah, that can be paid for. Kind of interesting. They've got college grants. Their kids are going to college. If they, I mean, they have to study, of course, but they can go to college. Okay, financial support and financial opportunities. Games program, we've got Medi-Cal, we've got Medicare. So there's a whole group of people that are taken care of down here. And this is a really good thing because we don't want a whole segment of our population going without, right? Now, we don't want someone to use the system, but it's a good thing to have.
Yes.
The only problem is there's a whole group of people that we didn't even talk about that I just call all the rest of us, or American families, or sometimes, oh, okay, I got it. It's in the bottom. It's good. Just go back. Ah, there we go. We're going to review again. Start from the beginning. You didn't get it the first time, right? Okay, now it's 11. Preschools, grants, financial support, opportunities, whole group of people. And all the rest of us that we call American families, or a lot of times it's called Main Street families. Let's see if I can just catch up for one more time. There we go. Okay. Well, we want our kids going to preschool, right? Has anyone investigated how much it costs to send kids to preschool? Listen up, Robin.
I really need to get this right now.
Twins coming at you, preschool. It's around $1,000 a piece a month. That gets to be a little on the scary side, wouldn't you agree? How about college education? We don't even need to go into that one. We know it's expensive, right? But you know what? We know how important these things are, so we make sure it happens, right? And lots of times it ends up being student loans. And you don't have to raise your hands, but think about it. How many of us have gotten student loans? And we walk out of college owing, right? And then kind of coming from behind. All right, but we make it happen. We'd love to own businesses. How many here would love to own a business? Absolutely expensive is it to own a business? And I don't mean starting that business. I mean staying in business long enough until it's profitable. Because that's up and around $500,000. I don't know about you, but I didn't have an extra $500,000 laying rent. Just wasn't going to happen. So what ends up happening is we end up working for somebody else, managing their company, working to build their goals and their dreams for them. And then financial advice. Well, I'd love to have financial advice. How about you? Are we doing this again? Seriously?
Is that from your phone?
That's not my phone doing it, but it does it every once in a while. It's okay. Well, we love to have financial advice, right? But financial advisors need to have at least $250,000 in which to invest to sit down with us. $250,000, just like that. Yeah? Probably not. So what ends up happening is we make too much money to take advantage of the support systems from down here. Not enough money to take advantage of the support systems from up there. And we work and work and work and work. And what changes? Anything? No. Isn't this gap getting bigger and bigger and bigger? Do you guys see a problem? So what do we do about it? It's kind of interesting when you start thinking about it. What have we always done? What would we do in our head? Well, we usually turn to what we already know. Okay? The banks, the lenders, life insurance companies, corporate America, all of these institutions, they were built for us, Main Street families. The only challenge is, are the banks there to get us wealthy? Probably not. Lenders there to get us out of debt? How about corporate America, making sure we're going to own businesses and become financially free? No. So the institutions that we thought were on our side, are they really on our side? Do you see a problem? The interesting thing is there is a problem, but nobody's really even mad about it. Now, that's something that's kind of interesting because I asked myself, well, why is that the case? Well, I started thinking and I go, you know what? It's a problem, but it's not a real problem because it didn't affect me. At least not until I get laid off. Or my kids can't go to college because I didn't make enough money. Or I can't pay all of my debts. Now, all of a sudden, this thing is really real to me, right? So it isn't real until it becomes personal. And you know, there's a group of us here that say, you know what, this isn't okay. It doesn't have to be that way. It's not a matter of what's going to happen. If it's going to happen to our families, it's a matter of when it's going to happen to our families. We know something like this is going to happen. Make sense? And just before I bring Robin up, it was funny because I actually went on the internet back a couple of days ago, actually about a week ago or so. And we looked it up, and we looked at 2007. And from 2007 to 2014, would you guys all agree everything's gotten more expensive? Yeah. Gas is more. Food. Do you know the average amount of income per family has gone down by $4,000 per family? And everything's getting more expensive. So there's got to be a way to get around this, right? And if there was, would you guys want to know about it? So what I want to do is I want to bring Robin up, and have her talk about that. So please help me welcome Senior Vice President Robin Sears.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for taking the time the long drive to be with us. So this is my new system, so bear with me as I apparently figure it out, because it keeps starting over and I'm not sure why. Am I doing that? But I didn't touch anything.
I know.
Your brain.
Okay, let's try this.
Now you broke it.
I broke it. Did you see me do anything?
Now that you touched it, you broke
Did I do anything? Really? I have two boys inside of me to tell me about women.
You have to keep it on percent.
Oh, not on quit? No, this is good to know. I'm not a technology lawyer. I just play on the TV. Right? Okay, so where were we? So obviously, the thing about the problem is it's something that we can all agree on, right? No one's going to sit here and argue that there isn't an economic gap and an access gap in this country. And the other really important part that she brought up is no one's going to argue that it's not changing. And they're really, there's a fight on, we just sort of started a fight on Washington, right? We're starting to hear that people are realizing that there's this problem, but we're not seeing real change happen. And part of the reason we're not seeing real change happen is because Washington can't fix our problems. And as Sue said, the banks and the lenders and corporate America, they're not interested in fixing these problems. And so it really comes down to us. The reason that you guys were invited tonight was because we know the more people who hear about the problem, the more people who acknowledge that the problem is real, the more people who hear that there is a viable solution, an opportunity from a grassroots perspective to start to make an impact, right? Because the best way that you can actually make a difference is by understanding what we're talking about so you can support it. Because you might be at work the next day and talking to a coworker who says something that sparks something you heard today, and you would be in a position to say to them, yeah, I'm actually really familiar with that, and there's someone interesting for you to talk to. But unless you know what's going on here and what we're talking about, you would never think to do that. And so that's what we're going to spend the rest of the evening talking about. What can we actually really do about this? Ready? Let's see if this works. I'm on present mode. Just tap this thing.
Tap. There you go. I got to go back.
I got to go backwards. I didn't
go back to go backwards. I know. Huh?
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. Here. Did you want mine?
They swore to me I couldn't go backwards.
So, all right. So you're new. That was like a back arrow, didn't it? And that was like a front arrow. So if you go front arrow, the way things are going to go forward, probably go forward. So if you go backwards, you're probably going to go backwards.
No, wait. Which way did you show me to swipe, sweetheart? Which did you show me to swipe?
Front arrow.
Swipe?
Front arrow.
No, that's called a swipe. In my business, it's right now a tap.
It'll never work before.
Just and in technology, a swipe versus a tap. So there's a swipe and there's a tap. So let's see.
Are you going back?
You should just go forward.
Okay. This is what happens in our lives. We're constantly going backwards unless someone shows us how to go forward. Thank God you're all here. Okay. So we sat down and said, how are we going to fix this problem? What can we possibly do? What can we do as an individual, as a community? Well, who here wouldn't mind being wealthy? Yeah, right? And we're all kind of trying to get up to that upper group, right? We have nothing against them. We like to be them. So we said, well, let's look at how they think and what they do with their money. And there are lots of ways to look at how wealthy people think and what they do with their money. We distilled it down to 4 principles to make it easy. The first thing we do is we talk about locking in advances for a family. When we've talked to people with a lot of money, they make sure that if grandpa dies, the rest of the family is taken care of. No one is ever falling backwards in any way, shape, or form. Establishing habits to build on. Someone somewhere in that family decided it was important to save money. Someone somewhere in that family decided it was important to pay attention to their money. Because the only way to make money is to have money, right? Securing advances with experts. This one's really interesting. I did not talk to one person that we would sort of call in the wealthy category who didn't have someone watching their money. If you had $2 million, would you know where it is? You probably want to know where it is, or at least you know who to call to know where it is, right? But for some reason, when we have $27,000, we're like, oh yeah, it's in an account somewhere. I think I have this old 401k. Somehow, it's acceptable to us to not actually pay attention to our money until it's a certain amount. But wealthy people say, no way, I'm going to make sure that experts are there watching my money on a daily basis. And they leverage strategic partnerships. With this one, I find the most interesting. This one is really my favorite personally because of the way that I function in this world. Most people, when the world falls apart, what do? We hunker down. We shut in. Like we maybe just talk to our immediate family, and then we emerge as butterflies and tell everybody about this total crisis and how we're all completely out of it, right? That's not what wealthy people do. Wealthy people pick up the phone and they call their financial advisor, they call their lawyer, they call their business partner, they call their best friends, and they get everybody in a room and say, okay, how are we going to fix this problem? Because they know that multiple heads are better than one, and that we can do more together than we can apart. So these were some pretty key learnings from wealthy people. But none of this is like rocket science, right? And none of this is anything that we haven't heard before. And yet we don't implement it in our lives in any way, shape, or form. And so we said, okay, how can we actually start to implement these practices and these philosophies in our lives? And the people who are living paycheck to paycheck, the people who don't have $3 million. And the first thing we needed to do was we needed to have products and tools and services that would support that. And so we said, okay, who do we need to partner with in order to be able to provide that? And that's where Primerica comes in. So how many of you have heard of Primerica? Potentially. Yes, a couple of us out there. So Primerica is a financial services manufacturing company that was actually started in 1977 by a couple coaches. And today, Primerica is a $2 billion public company. And there were some really key factors in this particular strategic partnership. And the reason that we felt working with Primerica made the most sense. First of all, they had a track record of working with Main Street families. There are a lot of financial service companies out there, a lot of financial services companies, right? We see them on TV, Prudential, The Rock, right? We give all of these things. But at the end of the day, they actually can't afford to work with Main Street families because they don't have a model for delivering to Main Street families. And so they're spending all their time going after the wealthy people. But Primerica has been doing it since 1977. So they have the financial strength and a leverageable system that would allow us to be able to support people without being the financial experts themselves, right? I did not wake up in the morning and say, I want to be in financial services. Would everyone kind of agree with that? Most of us don't wake up in the morning and say, God, all I want to do is sit in front of the computer and run lots of spreadsheets and be in financial services. But what I do love is the fact that I can sit down with a family and identify the points of access where that family can apply the principles we're talking about and connect that family to the experts. That's where I get to have the impact. And that's the place that I love to work with people. And so Primerica was the ideal partner for us to be able to do that. So let's look at these principles and really talk about, practically speaking, how do we work with families to be able to bring these principles into their lives? The first one is locking in advances for a family. And with that, we look at level term insurance. I was in Austin last weekend and I was talking to a bunch of my buddies. And as soon as the word insurance came up, everybody rolled their eyes. Somehow insurance, sometime in our generation, got a bad rap. This is about renting a bag of money. There's very few places you can rent a bag of money. And as it turns out, if there's anyone who's relying on your salary, whether it's a spouse or an elderly parent or a child, you need at least 10 times your income in the bank to know that they're safe. Now, wealthy people have 10 times their income, and they set it up in trust funds, right? They set it up in investment accounts. But for those of us who don't, we actually have the benefit of renting a bag of money for a little bit of money, right? It's the reason we rent an apartment instead of buy a house. And as our assets grow, we can pay less and less because we need a smaller bag of money to rent. So that's what's really available for families. Establishing habits to build up. We have the ability to start saving money in mutual funds at $25 a pop. Now, who's going to get rich off of $25? No one's raising their hand. What happens is if you put $25 away month after month after month versus if you put $0 away, how much do you think you have at the end of 12 months? A lot more than if you put $0 away, right? And then the next year, how much easier is it to increase that 25 to 50? Because you've already felt the pain in the 25. And that 50 to 100. And that 100 to 200. And the next thing you know, you're now saving $1,000 a month. And the biggest thing that young people, millennials, whatever you want to call us, don't learn in school. We don't learn in high school something called compound interest. And that tells us that based on the interest rate, our money is going to double in a certain period of time. And so if you start saving that $25 today, it sounds like a little bit of money. But how about 40 years from now? That's going to double, and it's going to double, and it's going to double. You're going to have at least 4 or more doubling cycles in those 40 years. No one thinks about that because we say, oh, well, when I have the $1,000, I'll save it. Well, what we want to start doing is really instilling those habits early on in very small ways because we know that if we start those habits, our kids are going to start those habits even earlier. Their kids are going to start those habits even earlier. And so we have mutual funds available for that. Securing advances with experts. We started to talk about this, right? So most managed accounts, and a managed account is an account with daily management, start at $250,000. I don't have $250,000, but I have enough money that someone should be watching my money. And I happen to be a lawyer. I don't know if, this happened again. How about we present? There we go. I don't know if Frank let you know what I do for a living, but I call my day job versus my dream job. This is my dream job. Did you tell these guys what I do for a living? Okay, so I'm a lawyer for technology startup companies. That's what I do. And because I'm a lawyer, social justice is a really big deal to me. And as far as I'm concerned, the idea that any of us doesn't have access to daily management of our money is more an economic gap issue, it's a social justice issue. There is no reason that certain people in this country should have access to this, and we don't. And Primerica said Primerica agreed and went and negotiated a deal that allows us to get into managed accounts for $25,000 instead of $250,000. Huge difference. Hundreds of thousands of people who can now have active management of their money because of this one product that you can only get by partnering with Primerica. And then the last one is leveraging strategic partnerships. And for that, we turn to Primerica and our advocates. And that's what I started to talk about when I first came up here. That's why you guys are all here. We have to be able to leverage each other because we're just not going to make a difference in this world if we don't. And so all of this, we know that if a family takes advantage of each of these principles, you're going to be able to lock in financial security for that family today. That family is going to be okay when it comes to retirement. The family is going to be okay if someone loses their job. But the financial freedom that Sue was talking about, and when we talk about financial freedom, we talk about having time and opportunity. I know a lot of people who have a lot of money and no time. Every partner in my law firm. And I know a lot of people who have a lot of time and no money, right? We know lots of those folks. But what we really want is time and money. The money to do what we want to do with our time. It's about 2 to 3 generations, right? We know that if you do this today, the people that you work with, the families that you impact, their kids will probably get to financial freedom. And if it's not their kids, then their kids' kids certainly will, right? So you can say, okay, so my grandkids, right? So, and I'm also pregnant with twin boys. Our grandkids, we've got 2 other boys, we know that they'll be financially secure. I have a very impatient husband now. And he said, why am I waiting 2 to 3 generations for this whole financial freedom thing? There must be something that I can do in this generation to actually have access to that kind of financial freedom for me and for my family. And so we took a step back and said, okay, we've got the game plan for financial security. Now what we really need is the game plan for financial freedom. And so I'm going to invite my husband, the great Brett Sears, to come up and talk about that game.
Great. Oh man, thank y'all for coming. It's funny is that this is a different outlet, right? It's normally straight. So, and there's no. It's funny is last week we were out of town. And it never fails. Like last week our meeting was fantastic, but whatever worked not in town. Like the next week, people are like, "Oh, there was a meeting today." So I'm in the back of the room pacing. I'm counting the people that aren't here. I'm like, God, doggone it. So, but I'm excited about who's here and kind of the possibility that's in front of us. Right? I'm Frank, and so I'm excited. I'm excited.
We're excited.
All right. So, really, what? So, and it's funny. I'm sitting in the back, and I'm like, we take what we do incredibly seriously. We just don't take ourselves that seriously. Why we do it, and tonight really is about an opportunity. I've been here for 18 years. I started the business. I was 22 years old, $24,000 of credit card debt. I walked into a room just like this, frustrated, didn't want to be here, didn't understand what was going on. They turned the lights down, the loud music. I'm like, what the hell, right? They put me in the front. And I'm like, why am I here? And they came up and they started talking about insurance and debt and investments. And to be honest with you, that was not the stuff that I dreamt about. I didn't wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning going, oh, goody, goody gumdrops, right? But there was something inside me that knew that I wanted to do something different about my life, that knew that I wanted to be a part of something bigger. And when, come on and tell them, the more to what the company did and what they stood for, the more I realized that I didn't think I was a dumb guy. But no one had ever showed my family how to get out of debt or how to save and invest or how to protect. And I didn't know any of that stuff. And I said, wait a second, if no one's sitting and talking to us, that's got to be some sort of, we can't be the only group of people who doesn't know this stuff, right? And so we walked through and kind of said, okay, what is this about? Why are we doing this, right? Because, you know, Robin just talked about a 2 to 3 generation game plan. Well, that wasn't happening in my neighborhood. A lot of us know folks that, you know, if you just keep doing what you're doing, right? If your folks just keep doing what they're doing, they can be completely and totally financially independent. Most of us, the answer is no. Well, where do we learn what to do with our money? Don't most of us learn from our parents and our friends? I got a question. Do you want your parents and your friends' financial life? Well, then we have a problem, right? Because that's what's socially acceptable. Those are the things that we learn, right? We go hang out with our friends. I was hearing earlier the trips to Vegas and stuff like that. Like we all have done that and all that. Any of us ever made a financial decision we knew was right at the moment, and then like 5 years later, it was so dumb we won't even tell another human being that we did it? But at that moment, we're like, this is the greatest thing. Why? Because we only have the reference points of ourselves. So we sat there and said, look, if we could just as a group of people provide access to the educational tools of the people that need it, and we could show a family how in 2 to 3 generations how to create wealth for their family, that's a fundamental change in that family's life. But again, you know, and I'm talking about it, right? 50 years is a long time. What about us? Right? So we talked about the fact that we're $4,000 less in income on average today, right? But our bills are more, right? What about us? Things come out, we want them shiny, we want them faster, we want new, we want all this other stuff, right? We understand we need to do the right things, but I always laugh going, how many of us agree that our grandparents were a lot tougher than we were? Right? They showed up earlier, they went home later, they did the right things, they made sure that they sacrificed to make sure their kids, their grandkids, like our grandparents are the toughest people in the history. They did everything right. Everything they were told to do. And as a generation, they're broke. We want everything new. We want everything now. We'll worry about it later. We're doing everything wrong as a community. What do you think it looks like for us 40 years from now? So when we talk about this meeting, every once in a while, someone, part-time opportunities. There's a space for everybody, right? So a lot of times, right, there in any given week, we're going to have somewhere between 25 and 12 to 30, just different people within their schedules, and we always kind of create that space. And one of the major reasons when I talk with somebody like, well, Brett, I don't really know if I want to do something like that. I go, I totally understand. Well, eating's relatively important, right? Because everyone talks when you watch TV, big houses and the cars, and we want to get financially independent. Like that's the dream, right? I want to make sure that we can all have lunch. Now, lunch doesn't sound as sexy as a nice car and traveling around the world, but 10 years ago, lunch averaged $4.60. Today, it averages 84 cents. 10 years from now, it's going to average $20 for lunch every day. How many of you like eating lunch every day? Right? That's lunch. 20 years from now, it's going to be $25 to $30 to $35. Well, how can it happen? The same way. We said, man, we've got to make sure that we put a one-generation plan together, but how does it? The only way to get free in this country is through ownership. It's it. Now, Primerica and the business I'm going to talk about is not the only opportunity for ownership, but you're in the room, so is it okay if I talk about this one?
Yes.
Right? Everyone's like, well, it's not the only one. I didn't say it is, but for me, it's the best one here, and I'm going to kind of walk you through why. You see, because one of the things we said is we were going to create a legitimate opportunity. Why did you guys sit in traffic for 4 hours? 3 hours? Because Frank said, you got to see this. Because when we sat down with Frank and Crystal, we showed them this picture, they're like, this is what I've been looking for. If the guys in my life see this, we can do something different. See, we said we want to harness that entrepreneurial spirit. You know, the person that says, man, I'm going to show up early, I'm going to go home late, I'm going to pay the price, I'm going to do what I need to do. There's got to be something out there. The problem is, without $500,000 of capital, most of us can't do anything with that spirit, can we? We said, man, we got to be able to leverage a support system. Why? They say 80% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. Do you think it's because the business owner's lazy? Do you think they don't work hard? Do you think they're not smart? No. Usually, traditionally, what happens is someone does a service, and they're like, they work for someone else, and they're like, man, I can do what this bozo does, and they go out and they start their own business, and they do the front end stuff. I don't care if it's selling rugs or a mechanic or a lawyer, whatever it is, they do the service that they've been doing, right or wrong. And they can knock that out of the park, and they can work 12 to 15 hours a day. They're working for themselves. They're their own boss. They're fired up. The problem is, how many of you realize that not only does someone have to do the front end stuff, but there's a whole bunch of backup stuff that has to get done. And unless the business is the back end stuff, how many think there's a good chance the guy that's really good at the front end doesn't want to do the back end? But after a period of time, because the back end stuff needs to get done, their attention goes away from the front and it starts dealing with the back. And now they're doing a little bit here and a little bit here, and they start spreading. We said, man, if we really wanted a legitimate shot to ownership, we had to have a leverageable support system so we could keep people in the front of the house and make sure they're taken care of in the back of the house. And then we needed transition. As I said, I was 22 years old with $24,000 of credit card debt. I was making $1,000, $1,300 a month. That's not rich, but it paid my bills. Could you imagine coming to a meeting, woo, I'm all fired up, quit my job, come do something I've never done before because I wanted to go do something? That's crazy. We said, man, what we need to do is we need to create an opportunity where someone can keep the security of their job and learn and build assets in their life. Learn a skill and be able to transition out so that we can harness those things. And we said, man, if we could bring these three things together, we can stand in front of a room of 30 or 3,000 and say we got a legitimate shot to deliver a one-generation game plan. So that's what we wanted to do. Is we said, look, right, Primerica is the most successful business incubator in American history. What's a business incubator? Basically what happens is a group of people comes in with energy and a desire. They say, man, I want to work with someone who knows what to do. They're going to teach me how to do it, and they're going to support me through that process. We've been doing this for 35 years. We've created more six-figure earners, more millionaires than any company in American history. We are not trying to figure this thing out. What we're doing is realizing is that there's 70 million people stuck, and no one's coming. And the problem is that if no one shows up, the problem's never going to get solved. And the 6 and 10 and 20 of us can't solve it. We need 50, 100, 200, 1,000, 5,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, 500,000 people that can go tell this story across this country, because that's the only way to get to 70 million. Why? How many of us know most of the people in our lives need help with their money? How many of our friends think they need help with their money? Like if we ask them, hey, you need help with your money? How many are like, nah, I'm fine. Why? Because they compare themselves to you and they're doing better than you. No, that's not true. How many of you have a friend that you don't, yeah, how many of you have a friend that's more messed up than you? Every time you feel bad, you call them and you instantly feel a little bit better. How many of you know you are that friend for someone else too? Okay, so the reality is, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to grow? Because the problem's real and the solution's vital. And so we said, man, we got an opportunity to take advantage of it. If we could solve a problem for 70 million families, do you think we could create some wealth in our life? Yeah. So we said, that's what we're going to do. So what does it mean? Path to ownership. We said, look, in order to really do this, we need low capital entry. Why? Most of us don't have $500,000. Most of us don't have $50,000. Most of us don't have $5,000. Most of us don't have $500. We get the greatest opportunity in the world. If there was an opportunity to be supported by a $2 billion company, and they said it's $5,000 and you have a path to ownership in 12 to 18 months, we'll give you a step-by-step game plan where if you run the play at the end of 18 months, you'll be on a pace to make between $120,000 and $150,000, and we just need an upfront capital of $5,000. Most of us would go, that sounds amazing, and I can't do it. For $5,000. We said we need low capital entry. We need to take all the costs off. It costs $200 for an FBI background check. Primerica says you pay 100 of it, we'll pay the other 100, and we'll pay $2,000 worth of licenses. We're not going to let money be the reason that somebody says this is a great idea, but I'm not going to do it. We needed a path to partner, a partnership platform. We are a strategic partnership business. We realize that we've got to be able to leverage. Primerica is a financial services company. There's 1,600 people in Duluth, Georgia right now that wake up every day building the financial services company and providing every resource and tool, Frank, for us that we don't got to do anything. We don't pay them to do anything. They're building their company to leverage, right? We've got a back office support company that runs the administration, the process, all the support, all this, so we don't have to think all that stuff up, so that we can go build our business and leverage these companies. We said we're going to let experts be experts even in business, so that we can run the front of the house and know that the back of the house is taken care of. And then at the end of the day, we need to make sure that there's a positive return of capital, right? Because if you're going to sit in traffic for 3 hours, it better be sort of worth it, right? Either the meeting is going to be good or Frank's buying dinner. One of the two things have to happen, right? So we sat back and said, okay, if we're going to do this, yes, we want to help people. Yes, we want to have fun. Yes, we want to joke around. Yes, but at the end of the day, you and I have to have a legitimate shot to make sure that that time investment is worth it. We said, all right, if we can do all that stuff, good things can happen. Well, we said, look, we have a goal. It says we're going to create a place for everybody, right? We build our business. Today, what this is about, the reason that all of us are here, phase one, is we understood something. We said if everyone in our life understood and supported what we did, we couldn't fail. Not if everybody bought or everyone joined or everyone got involved. We said if everyone in our life understood what we were doing, we could have a conversation. We just got back from Austin. I went and hung out with a lot of Robin's friends. Great people, smart, focused, committed. And they're like, what are you doing? And it was so amazing to just give a group of people the conversation for them to go, man, I understand what it is you're trying to get accomplished. And the next time you come back, I want to hear a little bit more because I know you're passionate about it. To build a support system is incredible because most of us feel like we have to take on the world alone. So we said the number one job is we need allies. The next, though, is we're going to transition to advocates. Why? Because we all know great people. But if you don't understand, if our allies don't understand what we're doing, they have no opportunity of introducing us. Other people should hear us. I was waiting tables at a place called Hudson's Grill in Simi Valley. I accidentally found the business. What if the guy didn't talk to me? If no one else recommended me to this, I would have never found it. We want a support system where there's hundreds and thousands of people that understand the mission that we're on, understand the belief that we're in, and are constantly looking for folks to say, hey, I know there's someone you need to meet. And then we need people that can be actively part of the growth. So we said, man, we're going to create a language for our allies, a position and a role for our advocates, and an opportunity for our associates. So we sat back and said, we got a position we called our GAPs, or gathering asset players. Why is this a big deal? Oops. There are 10,000, check this out. How old are you?
28.
28? 23. Okay, there are 10,000 people turning 65 years old every day for the next 19 years. This is the first generation that's ever had access to a 401k. Their parents have pensions. So these are people that have made $30,000, $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year. So the financial advisors have not talked to them. They're now getting ready to retire, and they have $70 or $150 or $300 or $900,000 sitting in their 401k, and no one's ever talked to them before. Now they're getting ready to retire. They're in the most precious and crisis-filled time in their life, and they're going to turn to an industry that knows more and treats them like their student. Do you see a problem coming for this country? Why do we do what we do? Because we have part-time, spare-time people that have very limited interest in building a business with us that say, man, if I just get licensed, if America, you pay for it. And if I just help some folks get access to the right tools, I know they're going to be taken care of. I want to make sure my sister and my cousin and my next-door neighbor have access to the tools because no one else is going to do it. Well, we also like some passive income. $1 million in assets pays our gap $4,300 a year. The average Social Security check is $1,269. If we had someone start with us at 55, by the time they're 60 and they've had $1 million a year, they'd actually have more money in passive income range than they would from Social Security. Could that start to change somebody's life? We've got our part-timers. There are people that I meet that love, right? Firing. Right? They love their job. It's what they dreamt about. And every once in a while, we get into a conversation about it. And they're like, no, I don't want to quit my job. I'm like, shit, I don't want you to quit your job either. But if you had an extra $911 in your checking account right now, how many of you would know what to do with it? Have any of you ever, you all seem serious there. Have any of you ever found $20 in your own pocket? And you thought God intervened? Right? You're like, oh, I needed this. Guys, that's $20. What about an extra $411 every single month? About a year and a half ago, we started transitioning to these managed account kind of principles. They didn't exist for us. We didn't have access to stuff like that, right? Sue and I spent the last year and a half kind of doing this. Then last night, right? I hope it's okay to say, but last night, Sue got it, right? Just in something she's just been kind of doing. Got paid like $1,700 last night. The first of the month didn't do anything. I got paid $4,400 last month. That's $50,000 a year in passive income before the day starts. How many of you could use an extra $50,000 to $100,000 of passive income to show up? Not enough. Okay.
So start.
Our part-timers can make an extra $500 to $1,000 a month. Not quit their job. We've got our part-timers that say, man, I want to go full-time. I want to build a business one day. Right? Frank and I have talked about this. He goes, man, I'm going to do this for a period of time. I want to do it. But if I can do this, if I like it, if I'm good at it, and I want to do it, man, it'd be fun to be on the road to be able to control my life. And then we've got what we call our team owners. See, we've talked a lot about ownership, but I want to make sure that we understand why ownership is so critical. I started this conversation by saying one generation game plan is through ownership. It's because of these three things. A business owner has access to passive income, revenue, and profit. Most of us at our job, how many of us get paid for work we did last year? How many of us get paid when we train someone and they can do what we do when we're not there? Okay, we get paid when we work. That make sense? We've all experienced this model, but we get to experience revenue. If we don't work, we don't eat. That make sense? A business owner says we have the ability to earn profit based on work we did already, and we have the ability to duplicate ourselves. Well, we sat down and said, man, we want to be able to have this position. What about our team owners? Well, look, passive income, $15 million of assets under management is $8,300 a month. $100,000 a year in passive income. If you help your team with $30 million, that's an additional $83,000 in passive income. Revenue. If you have a business that helps 30 families a month lock in their advances and establish habits, make between $12,000 to $16,000 a month. And if you have a regional vice president organization, see, tonight's about finding some team owners, and you teach them how to help just 15 families a month. Half of this, that's a $6,200 a month profit, $72,000 a year in profit. Well, if you got one, that's 72, 144, 210, 228, $350,000. See, the reason we have the ability to do something different is we said, look, $200,000 in passive income, $200,000 in revenue, $350,000 in profit, it's $750,000. And we built a system to show someone how to do this in the next 5 years. Would this start to make a difference in our lives? Now, every once in a while, someone looks at it like, wow, look, is this for everyone? No. We're going to have some that want to be games. Great. It's not about turning someone into anyone else. There's going to be someone who be part-time, someone who be full-time, and there's going to be some that want to open offices. We said, man, there's a place for them, but there's a role for all of us. Because the problem is real. We've got to make sure that the opportunity is real. See, guys, whether it's our allies, the igniter of the movement, our advocates, our local supporters, our associates, the opportunity needed to be in front of us. So why are we doing this? A 22-year-old waiter sat in a room like this 18 years ago and said, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Did I want to be in financial services? No. Did I think I could be a successful business owner? No. I didn't want to feel like this anymore. We sat down and said, if the problem is real, and someone can figure out a way to solve it, they can change their life. Do we have to spend a lot of time convincing us that there's 70 million of us stuck and no one coming? So that's a real problem. If we could take the tools of the wealthy to them, and they just had a game plan to save and invest in a step-by-step plan, do you think that could make a difference in their financial life? So the problem's real, the solution's real, right? It's viable. Now all of a sudden, what if you had an army of folks that said, man, we want to go change this because we can't change the world together by ourselves. The 12 of us can't do it. But it could start with us. See, 40 years ago, I sat in a room and said, we've got to create a better system. We got to align ourselves with folks and say, man, we want to be a part of it. And we spent 4 years tearing this thing down and rebuilding it. And we went live on a lot of this stuff very, very recently. And we are just starting. And it's a special time right now. It's uncomfortable, right? It's anxious. I'm anxious, frustrated. I'm excited. I am a competitor. I love that. But you know what? The reality is that we're never going to have this moment again. There's never going to be a moment where there's 12 of us in the room, where there's a handful of folks that say, I see where you're going, I see why we're doing it, and we want to go be a part of this. Everyone says, I wish I was there then. This is that then. And it starts with just a few folks. And I'm really, really excited because I have my friend Frank here. And Frank is newly licensed, so we wanted to congratulate him for getting his license. We just got in today. They said, when am I going to get this? I go, he's coming today. So he's like, what is it? Right? But that's a license to build a business. That's an opportunity to say, okay, in the month of October, let's go help some folks, let's go grow, let's go be a part of this thing, and let's have an opportunity to do something special. And that's where we're at, guys. So, we always talk about the movement continues, right? I'm going to fall over here. Oh. We're going to be back here next Wednesday. Well, we got practice back here on Saturday mornings, 9 to 11, jeans and t-shirts, and we just got to sit down and break down this entire business. The opportunity to say, look, how do we get more people to be a part of what we're doing? Guys, the story is here. Now we get to look inside and say, I want to be a part of this. Whether it's as an ally and support the people in your life. It's as an advocate, someone popped into your head saying, man, they've got a me because they've got a here. Or as an associate that says, man, I fit somewhere between that gap and team owner. How's that work? Get together with the person who brought you. Get your questions answered, and let's get this thing started. So I want to thank you guys for coming, right? And let's have some fun. So thank you. Normally,
Because you weren't in the back to put it on.
I know.
Hey. Okay, how are you? Did you tell someone?
Yes.
I'm like, I think you know. Yeah.